In the back. This man here with the camera is my husband, Craig Ellison, who's going to record today's session and put it out on YouTube. So in the future you'll be able to link, and if you want to refer to this for your papers, you'll be able to see it again. Mr. Tagliapietra is someone I've known for 15 years. He was an associate of my husband. These are both computer guys. Gigi started one of the first computer networking companies in Italy, 1991 or so.
87.
87, okay. Oh, we're getting old. So, and my husband worked for PC Magazine at the time. That's how they got to know one another. Gigi is now sort of semi-retired. He is a computer consultant. You are a security consultant with the EU, the European Union. And today, though he's not talking about computer security, today he is talking about innovation, which of course is part of technology. If we don't innovate, the technology doesn't change. So he often speaks to corporate organizations, universities, even small children sometimes in schools, about creativity, about innovation, and today he's connecting all of that to his passion of music. Gigi also plays cello, plays in an orchestra in Ellison, Italy, which is in the north of Italy, very near the German border, Austria. So he will be introducing you today, if you're not familiar with the composer Mahler. He will be talking about Gustav Mahler, his life, and using Mahler as a metaphor, we've spoken in here about metaphor, for innovation. So you will be hearing music, you'll be seeing visuals, it's very multimedia, and with that I should turn it over to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
Oh, before you start, questions. The questions I asked you to write up for today's session, if you would pass them forward, I'll go through them, and you can speak for about an hour, and then it will be open to questions. I'll use those that you've composed, and if anyone has questions you would like to raise your hand and just ask it, Gigi, you can do that.
Lights.
Lights.
Aha. Okay, first of all, let me thank Carol to invite me. It's always a great pleasure for me to be able to talk about my passions. My passion is music, first of all, and innovation and change. You know, even when I was your age, I didn't want to just accept for granted what I had around, and so I ran into technology because it was the easy way to try to change the world around me. And question: any one of you plays a musical instrument? What do you play?
Piano.
Piano?
Guitar.
A guitar? Anyone else? Do you listen to the music at least? Yeah? Do you sing? Anyone sings? No, nobody. You're just silent. Okay, you stick your iPod in your ear and that's it. That's the way you relate to music. Okay, I'm going to shock you today. Before I start, the question I try to address is, why in the world a person wants to change something? Why the corporation, a manager says, okay, I don't like the way it is, I want to change it? Why Steve Jobs decided that the telephones that they had was not good enough and invented the iPhone? Why? What urges someone to change the things? Okay? Why there's people who volunteer doing service and social services. But when you decide you want to change the world, how do you face obstacles? You know, in general, if you say, I want to change this, the reaction is, no, it's not possible, you can't. Okay, stop thinking. And then you try to change, and then the situation becomes more complex than you expect. How do you find the energy to overcome obstacles? And after all, why is it so difficult? Why it is so difficult to drive innovation? Why there are so many failures? Can we avoid the task? Can we just say, okay, it's impossible to change. Let's accept the world as it is for granted. Well, now I'll tell you what I think about it. Okay, my opinion. I don't want you to just take it for granted. You just need to know in advance what I think. I think that the innovator is motivated by a profound sense of ethics and aesthetics. Because we believe, the innovator believes that a better world is nicer. That what we see outside is ugly and we want to change for the beauty. So we have a sense of aesthetic. And then we have a sense of ethic because we think that when we see something wrong, we think it's unjust. And we want to make it equal for all humans. So this is one of the inner motivators. Then the motivation for the innovator is also the fact that we think that we have received something from our parents and from our ancestors. And we don't want to die without leaving something to our kids and to our children's children. So we have this sense of continuity of our role. So we want to give a sense to our life and to the life of the ones that will be after us. The innovator is someone who creates words, entire worlds, not dreams, but real world. Then he wants to make it real. You know? Think about, are you familiar with Martin Luther King? Do you know just the name? His famous talk, how is it? I have a dream. But his dream was not the announcement he had a bad night, you know, that he had something on his stomach and he couldn't sleep. His I have a dream was the envision of a different world. And this is the big difference between just a simple dreamer and an innovator. One has a dream and then says, okay, it's impossible. And the innovator says, I have a dream and I'll fight to make it possible. So you transform what is possible into what is real. Then innovation is something that requires dedication and discipline. It's hard, it's difficult, okay? So if you know the big innovators of today, the people that deal with the computers, with science, they have a great discipline. You know, they're really driven by their will to change, but they know that they have to study and have a great determination. This is a point with music. I don't know how you study piano, but if you want to play, you have to practice. And sometimes you're tired and you don't want, but you know that if you don't do it, the day after is going to be worse. So you have to, and you have to keep this discipline. And I volunteer in the School of Music, and I can tell you that the best guys your age that are playing instrument, the best one are also the best one at school, because after all, discipline and method is something that you then apply to all your activities in life. There is a difference between informing and educate. Inform means I want to take your brain, I have a model, and I try to put your brain to this form. To educate comes from Latin, means I want to conduct you from here to there. So education is a process, is a way in which you indicate a roadmap and you lead your people to this new situation. The innovator is someone who educates, who conducts his employees, his friends, his whatever, from one point to another. The innovator is like a conductor. Do you know, have you ever seen an orchestra conductor? Have you attended a concert, a classical concert, one with a conductor? He is the only one who doesn't make a sound. Okay? If the musician stops, you don't hear a lick. He doesn't produce any sound. It's like the coach of a basketball team. He's the only one who doesn't score. But he's the one who achieves the result through the others. So the innovator is someone who has to convince other people to do. And you cannot force him. You cannot constrain them to that. You have to really make it so they are willing to perform those actions. Great orchestra conductor transform their passion into their musicians' passions. The great coach are just transforming their desire to win into the athlete's willingness to win. So, it's something really magic. The innovator knows that you have to have the whole picture always, but also pay attention to details. And understanding that the whole is a sum of parts. But you have to look at both simultaneously. This is something that you have to face every time you try to innovate something. The innovator generates growth in a society. So, after all, his action is an economic action, has an impact on a general wealth. It's not just a humanitarian act. So, lots of ideas. But these are my opinions. And we can talk about it if you want, but yeah. But the question is, how to hold these opinions? How can I say that? First of all, I learned it from working with great innovators. I worked with one of the inventors of the networking system. The inventor of ARCnet is a friend of mine and Greg's. And I worked for 6 months with one of the inventor of the web. Actually, the one who employed Tim Berners-Lee, who is the actual inventor of the web. And talking to them and trying to look the way they think, you learn a lot. Second, in my professional career, I did computer related activities for 30 years. So I had to, when I started, there were no PCs. And when the PC was invented, I had to explain people what you need a PC for. And at the beginning they say, oh no, this is not a corporation tool, this is a personal computer, so you use it for your personal sake. And we thought that we could use those machines into businesses. But also I learned a lot from him, from this gentleman here. It's Gustav Mahler. He's a musician. He's one of the most important musicians of last century. And I'll try to explain you why. Why Mahler? Because he was an extraordinary innovator. Really an extraordinary innovator. He knew the music. He was the top orchestra conductor of his time at the end of 1800. So he knew perfectly all that was before. And at that time, the music was under a big revolution. And there were a composer who wanted to destroy the music as we know. So they started talking about atonality, so no more tunes, no more harmony, no more melody, no more rhythm. They wanted to just say, stop that. That's the past. We want to build the future. And we want to build the future by destroying all that was before. Mahler says, no, 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 no. The real role of the innovator is to understand what was before. Look ahead and try to understand what's coming and try to integrate what's coming into what was. So in his symphonies, you will hear instruments that were never used before, but they are inside the symphony. He used strange instruments, cowbells, hammers, a mandolin. You've never heard a mandolin first in a symphony. He did it. He wanted that sound, included that into the symphony. Because he said, the symphony is like the whole world. He must embrace everything. So it's a vision that makes him so great. Then, I love Mahler because he's not just a world of music. He's a world of sound. The only problem he has that he didn't have an amplifier at his time. So he had to use other tricks to make the power of sound the way he was thinking about it. But the most important thing is that he is the first composer in history that put himself in the music. You know, in the past, Beethoven, for instance, used the music to talk about Napoleon, to the big heroes, or to mythical figures. Okay, the music was a kind of fantasy. He is the first one that, from his first work till the end, will talk about himself, about his relation with life, with love, with death, with kids, with the paradise, with the hell, you know. So, talking about his own personal history, he talks about us. So it's talking, he tries to transform with the music the world, but at the same time, he tells our own story. Discussing with Carol, I asked, but is a musician a storyteller? You know, you're in a class of writing, and you talk about storytelling and narrative. Do you think that a musician is a storyteller? Actually, I think that Mahler would answer to this with a strong yes. Yes. All great musicians have something to tell to their audience. And after all, a musician is not different from a writer. That through the storytelling, invite you to think differently, to stretch your brain, to open your ears, to look at the world differently. Okay, now, to give you an idea, Mahler lived just across 1800 and 1900. Okay, so similar to today. You know, we're just about 1900 and 2000. Okay, and at this time, the telephone was invented. Sigmund Freud. You know who Sigmund Freud is? Have you heard of him? Okay, so it's that the period, and this is why he talks about himself in his music, because actually, you know, at that time the approach to the study of psychology started, and they discovered that the human being could be studied. The car was invented, the airplane. Okay, Caruso and the reproduction of sound through a tool. Before that, you couldn't listen to the music except you would go to a church or you would go to a court. to a prince. Normal people couldn't listen to the music. But then they invented the system to record the music and reproduce the music. That was great. That was a big, big change. And then in the art, we have Picasso, and we have Van Gogh, and we have all the cultural turbulence of a change in a culture of a time. And usually the music is a little behind. Usually is the literature or the visual arts that change first. They announce the new things coming. Mahler was right on the spot. And his music tells you that something big was changing in the European scenario at that time. So, I wonder if you know this music. These are the movie blues. One of the first progressive rock of its time. You know this guy? You know Jimi Hendrix? You know Pink Floyd? If you listen to Pink Floyd, to Jimi Hendrix, actually you're listening to Gustav Mahler's ideas of music. You're used to helicopter sounds and cash registers in that music, and you find perfectly normal. And this sound, this weird sound. And Jimi Hendrix playing the American anthem all distorted at Woodstock Festival. That's part of our culture. But it was Mahler, and this is Mahler too. All the movies soundtrack you're listening to brought Mahler's concept of music. So, even though you don't know, you are listening to Mahler's music almost every day. If you listen to rock, if you go to the movies, okay, if you find someone who's trying to change the music of his own time. So, here's between 1800 and 1900, today, we are at the same position. There was Vienna, today there is Shanghai, there is this new world kind. Yes, we are at the same situation. And at that time, they needed new values to relate to enter into the new century. And we are in the same situation. We need to find new values, new ideas. What's come next? What are we doing with